So acetaldehyde, yeah. So acetaldehyde. How do I not know how to say this? Acetaldehyde? Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to be doing something super exciting, answering all of your questions that you guys asked me on my Instagram page about alcohol. Surprisingly, people don't really think about it this way, but alcohol is something that pharmacists actually have to know a lot about because it can cause a lot of drug-drug interactions. It's kind of like a drug in itself because of the way that it affects your body. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Alrighty. Okay, so I have your list of questions here all pulled up. I'm going to do my best to run through all of them as fast as possible. So a lot of these questions, in order for me to answer, I feel like first I have to get into what's called Pharmacokinetics, or my good friend PK from pharmacy school. Plot twist, it was not my good friend. It was actually my least favorite class. But basically, Pharmacokinetics is kind of important because it's all about how drugs and things like that work its way through your body and get to the places that they need to go in order to work. So one of the things that I never knew before I started pharmacy school was that when you ingest any type of drug, it has to get to the place where it's supposed to work. And it distributes differently into your body depending on what it partitions to. So some drugs partition into body fat, it clings to body fat more. Some drugs partition into water more, it clings to water more. To get into the nitty gritty, if you really want to know the details, there's actually something called volume of distribution, which basically describes the relationship between the amount of drug in your blood versus the amount of drug in your actual body. This mathematical concept gives us a better understanding of drug distribution. But you guys don't really care about that anyway. So in terms of alcohol, what you need to know is that and this explains why women tend to feel the effects of alcohol more than men. Because women tend to have a lower amount of water in their body and they have more fat in their body than men. This means that we end up having higher levels of alcohol in our blood than men who ingest the same amount of alcohol. This also explains why women are more susceptible to toxic effects from alcohol on your liver, your brain, and heart. Now, there's another reason why women feel the effects of alcohol more than men typically. And that has to do with our next segment, which is enzymes. So another reason why women tend to feel the effects of alcohol more than men is because of a little enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, or we're gonna call it ADH for short in this video. So ADH is important in order to metabolize alcohol, and you find it either in your stomach or your liver. Now for women, we have this double whammy because not only do we make less of ADH in our stomachs, the ADH that we have in our liver is actually less functional than men's, so it's like the few remaining enzymes that we do have don't really work as well as men's. So usually when you drink ethanol, your body's ADH, which women have less of, converts that into something called acetaldehyde, which is actually a toxic substance. I want you to put a pin and a star in this because this is important. So acetaldehyde, yeah. So acetaldehyde. How do I not know how to say this? Acetaldehyde? Acetaldehyde. So like anything in science, your body actually has a defense mechanism for this because there is a second enzyme called aldehyde dehydrogenase, or ALDH. I know they're confusing. The second enzyme takes that toxic acetaldehyde and converts it into something that's less toxic called acetate. From then on, that gets broken down into water and carbon dioxide, which you just excrete, isn't really a problem. Now before that can all happen, there's something called Firstpass metabolism which happens where basically the ethanol first goes to your stomach, of course, and the ADH, or alcohol dehydrogenase, that's supposed to be in your stomach helps metabolize that, so that way you get a head start. What I mean by getting a head start on that is that then some of the ethanol that you just ingested gets metabolized and excreted, so then you have less to work with. Now since women have less of this enzyme that's supposed to be in first pass metabolism, the ADH, since we don't have enough of that, that means that we can't really get that head start on men, which means that we have more levels of alcohol in our bloodstream. The triple whammy for me is that some Asians actually have a different type of gene for the second enzyme that I mentioned, the aldehyde dehydrogenase, or ALDH. That was the enzyme that turned the toxic acetaldehyde into a less toxic acetate byproduct. Yeah, so we have a variant of that where it doesn't really work as well, meaning that we have more buildup of that toxic byproduct, the acetaldehyde. Why can't I say this? So when that builds up, it causes the Asian flush phenomenon, which is basically where you get nauseous, you have a pounding headache, your head flushes. Really not speaking from experience or anything. When I say toxic, do I mean we're gonna die if we have alcohol? No, but it's gonna be very, very unpleasant. And so the pharmaceutical industry actually hijacked this mechanism and decided to turn this into a drug, which is now called Antabuse or disulfiram. It inhibits that second enzyme, the ALDH, and that prevents, like I said, the acetaldehyde from being removed. And then so the buildup of that causes all the symptoms that I just mentioned. And that should hopefully be enough to prevent people from drinking. Which is kind of funny if you think about it, because that's how I feel like most Friday nights. Another way that your body breaks down alcohol, and it's through this enzyme called CYP2E1. It's in the cytochrome P450 family. Really popular family when you're talking about drug metabolism and all of that kind of pharmacy stuff. Basically, this mechanism is active when you ingest large amounts of alcohol. And I want you to put a pin in this 2E1 because this will become important later when I talk about hangover cures. Okay, so you guys all asked, the most common question was, tell me all of the hangover cures. And just for completeness sake, I ended up looking this up. And the number one answer for all of them was like, drink less alcohol. And I was like, no shit. Of course, if I did that, then I wouldn't be looking this up. Anyway, so some myths out there for how you can prevent a hangover are to drink Pedialyte, take vitamin B12, I've heard drink of coffee, I've heard eat like a burger right before. Basically, there's a lot of different ways to treat your hangover, and that's because your hangover is totally dependent on so many things actually. It's dependent on what you ate the day before, how much water you had the day before, if it's the time of month for you girls out there, if you're taking a specific medication. Like, there are so many different variables that a hangover cure that worked for you one time might not work for the next time. Also, super important, you guys probably already know this, but your type of hangover really depends on what type of alcohol that you had too. So there's really no way to be like, this is the gold standard, but what it comes down to for hangovers is targeting the reason why you feel that hangover. So the reason why you get the nausea, the headache, the sensitivity to light, all that kind of stuff just comes down to the fact that you are super dehydrated and you're lacking electrolytes because alcohol is a diuretic. If you want advice from a young, thriving little Asian, my best tip is just to hydrate, drink a lot of water the night as you drink. Be attentive to what kind of alcohol you're drinking because things like hard liquor affect you differently than beer or wine, of course. And then when you get home, nice big bowl of ramen. Then again, I'm only 24, so like ask me in like 10 years and my hangover cure might be different. I might just like stop drinking by then, who knows. So yeah, like I was saying, it all just comes down to replenishing those electrolytes that you lost from sweating and urinating, things like that, and also replacing all of the liquid that you lost too. So that's why people really like to drink Pedialyte, is because Pedialyte has electrolytes and liquid all packed into one. One thing I do want to touch up on, because I can't be the only one here with this problem, or I might be actually because I was the only one in college with this problem, is that I actually cannot sleep after a night of drinking a lot of alcohol, and that has to do with the fact that alcohol actually affects your deep brain waves as you sleep, and it also affects things like your circadian rhythm and your REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. Anyways, to go back to hangover cures, the number one thing that we know you shouldn't be taking though is Tylenol. You guys hopefully know this, but I'm gonna just explain a little bit of why in case you didn't know why. Oh god, okay, are we all good? Are we all here? For some reason my camera just died in the middle of this, but back to action. Alrighty guys, so you know how I said earlier how when you consume large amounts of alcohol that the enzyme CYP2E1 is used in alcohol metabolism? So that's actually a part of Tylenol metabolism also. So the CYP2E1 takes the Tylenol and turns it into something called NAPQI, and that's actually a toxic product, sad face. And so if that builds up, then that can cause lots of liver damage, which is obviously bad. We don't want that. That says liver tox, because I love abbreviations. But luckily, your body has a way of dealing with that, and that's something called glutathione. It's what's considered a free radical scavenger. So it's good because it helps your body take care of that toxic NAPQI, which is great. But when you look at this enzyme CYP2E1 here, so what happens when you drink lots of alcohol is that actually causes your body to make more 2E1. It's like a reflective type of, self-protective mechanism. So if you have more of this enzyme 2E1, that actually means that you end up creating more NAPQI when you take Tylenol. So when that increases, obviously that's bad. And also when you drink a lot of alcohol, that actually depletes your stores of the glutathione, which is doubly as bad because now you don't have this, safety mechanism to help detoxify the NAPQI, which is sad. Not only is this important to know because you don't want to take Tylenol while you drink, but this is also important because Tylenol is in a lot of different common cold and cough products, so you really have to check your labels and make sure that you don't see the word acetaminophen or Tylenol or anything like that in your products. Okay, so another question that you guys ask is why you can't drink on antibiotics, and there's a number of reasons for this. First of all, they both cause the same side effects, so, you know, when you drink alcohol or when you're taking antibiotics, you feel nausea, you feel dizziness, you feel drowsiness, could vomit. So to begin with, when you combine both of those, you're not really gonna feel great. Actually, you're gonna feel really crappy. On top of that, if you end up, say, vomiting right after you take the antibiotic, it's kind of like you never really took it to begin with, and you really want to be taking your antibiotics consistently at the same time to make sure that they're at the right level that you need in your body in order to fight the infection. Now, for some antibiotics, I know we all say don't drink on antibiotics, but for some you absolutely 100% should not be. And so those antibiotics are metronidazole or Flagyl, and also there have been some cases of this happening with the drug Bactrim. Metronidazole or Flagyl is used for bacterial vaginosis, and Bactrim is used for UTIs, so that's why I wanted to mention that in this video. Something that you guys out there will most likely end up taking at some point in your life. You especially shouldn't drink on these because it causes something that's called a disulfiram-like reaction, which basically kind of the same thing as before. You get that nausea, head throbbing, vomiting, all that fun stuff. And disulfiram is that drug that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about enzymes. Alcohol also interacts with an antibiotic called linazolid. It's used for a bunch of different conditions. You want to take it while you're drinking because that can cause an interaction that causes super high blood pressure, and that becomes really dangerous. It's called hypertensive crisis, which, as you can tell, is bad. Speaking of UTIs, you shouldn't really be drinking alcohol while you have a UTI in general because, so alcohol is acidic, right? And because of that, it actually can irritate your bladder, and that can help worsen your symptoms that you already have from your UTI. Long story short, if you have a UTI, drink water, stay in, mind your business. At the end of the day, alcohol is kind of like a drug, like I mentioned before. It needs to be metabolized, it affects your heart rate, it affects breathing, it affects fluid levels, consciousness, all those different things, and it's also considered a depressant, right? So when you combine it with other drugs that are also considered depressants, so that would be like opioid medications, antidepressants, drugs like benzodiazepines, so that would be like Xanax, and barbiturates, things like that, that can really put you in danger because it can affect your breathing levels, and that's probably the worst thing possible is if it slows down your breathing. So all in all, guys, that was it for all of your questions. At the end of the day, just be careful out there. Remember to be conscious of what you're putting in your body, and as always, don't be afraid to ask your pharmacist. Now, this was just some fun fact stuff. If you have any questions about anything that I mentioned for yourself, talk to your doctor first before you do anything, just because they'll have a better idea of what's going on with your body. So anyways, I'll see you guys in my next video.